All right, welcome back. We're going to jump to technology now, which is one of my favorite things to talk about. And the police chief of Thibodaux is going to bring us along. So, Scott, take it away.
Thanks, Martin. Well, when we came in, we started looking at the tools and resources that the officers need to do their job well. Like we talked before, one of the first things I introduced was I wanted to change the paradigm, the culture of law enforcement, from one of reaction, of waiting for the radio to ring to run over and handle a complaint, to be more proactive, looking at data, mapping data, because of the cognitive nature of crime and human behavior. So kind of predictive policing or predictive patterning. But to do that, you have to have data and resources, software, hardware to capture that. So one of the things we're working in conjunction with the Lafourche Parish Sheriff's Office and also the different police departments in the parish, it's a record management system. It's called LEDS, Law Enforcement Data System. And I think we're probably going to be one of the first in the state, if not the country, where every law enforcement organization in the jurisdiction is going to be tied into the same seamless record management system. Our reports, our information, everything's going to be shared, which, in this day of talking about seamless integration of information, we're going to actually do it.
But that also closes the loopholes that if one officer wants to or misses something that the other one had done maybe last month, you could have a problem. So it makes it seamless, doesn't it?
It really does. And I always say we're one of the few players in the game that respect jurisdictional boundaries. If we say, well, they leave the city of Thibodaux, well, that's not our problem anymore. Well, sure it is. But all because they're in the parish or in Lockport or Houma, it's still our problem. It's the community's issue. So by making this seamless integration of information, it's sharing, total transparency. I think we're going to see a new age of information and intelligent policing that's going to give us the edge that we need. So in addition to that, of course, like I said, you get the information, you capture it, then you have to disseminate it. One of the things where I'm real big on, we always talk about community policing, is we want to keep the guys out of the squad room. Well, one thing to do that is to give them the mobile data terminals inside their units, so they don't have to come back to the squad room for hours and write their reports. And that's where guys like Todd as a supervisor from his unit and guys like Joe in the field can write their incident reports and things like that. So we're actually testing and evaluating different vendors and some laptops and tablets, just something to untether the officers from the squad room and further untether them from the patrol car.
Because they pretty much live in those units.
They do. It's your office for 12 hours a day.
Yeah.
In the heat, the cold, these guys do it,
And y'all got beautiful units. I don't know how anyone could criticize them. They're beautiful, but they're spacious, and you needed them last week when it rained.
Yes.
And Thibodaux kept you out the water, didn't it?
Sure. Hey, and it's practical, like we said. This isn't a luxury vehicle. It's a stripped-down model. It's a police package. And from an officer standpoint, you need that high observation point. It helps them spot, like you said, the inclement weather, the high water. It helps you spot traffic violations from an elevated position. And then from what I enjoy is the high visibility aspect of it. Now you've got this huge billboard with police across the side. So as far as the deterrent effect on crime, it has a fantastic effect. But in the vein of technology, Martin, where it's one thing to have the record management system to capture the data, then we have an analyst on staff that'll analyze it and disseminate it and push it out to these desktops. But one of the things we use is data mapping, and we have an example of that. And these are things that and it looks simplistic, or maybe it looks like a grouping of amoeba or something.
Let's say amoebas.
Amoebas. but like Todd would come in when he comes into a shift and he looks at these graphs, and it's just simply when Todd has to make a determination where to deploy his resources. What this is a time of day and a day of week of graph, and what you'll see is where those red spots are. We talked about before, the hot spots. That tells Todd where the highest instances of crashes are occurring, and it tells you the days. So if you look at the bottom, it's 24 hours across the bottom, and then it's 7 days a week across the top. So say, for example, and I guess I'm aging, but the one at the bottom, just for an example, that would be in that time slot and on that day. So if Todd has to assign his officers to do traffic enforcement for the sake of preventing crashes, he would know in that particular time slot on that particular day, that's when crashes are occurring. Say if you go up to Sunday and Sunday at about 6 o'clock in the morning, if there's no crashes that are occurring, then there's no need to assign officers to a traffic enforcement capacity. They roll back more into a criminal enforcement capacity. But that's just a real simplistic example of what we use.
That's simplistic, but that's smart.
It really is.
Yeah, that's no waste of resources or energy or time.
And that goes back to that intelligence-led policing model and that paradigm of intelligence-led database, and that DDAX program we talked about, the data-driven approach to
Which
crime
I
and
got to
traffic
tell you, it's
safety.
still my favorite. I like
Yeah,
that.
it's pretty
They didn't have
progressive.
that on Adam 12.
No, they didn't. What I think is, when they used to pick up the old home phone
Yeah.
and they would talk on it,
Right. And Barney sure didn't have that on Andy
No,
Griffin.
but he wanted that motorcycle real bad. If you remember that episode, him and his sidecar.
Policing has come a long way.
Absolutely. We've got to stay ahead of the curve, the technology-wise. And from my office, I look at data every day. That's what I do. It's what I appreciate. But when you got guys like Lieutenant Gagnard and Joe Terio, this is where it matters. These are the guys that need that data. It's one thing for me and my analysts to sit there each day and go over statistics and standard deviations, but it's got to be end-user friendly. So lieutenants, all my commanders, all my officers, where they log on to this crimereports.com, and Todd can build these reports any day of the week, any type of crime, even to where he can map his individual officers' activities. He wants to know if they're doing foot patrol, they're making traffic stops or building checks. He can check that because it's all mapped, and that's important for and Todd's he's really grasped the concept. He's done a super job with it, and guys like Joe use the data to do his job every day.
And we're going to talk with both Todd and Joe at length in a little while, but we're going to take a break. When we come back, something that you've done that I think is a good thing is a reserve.
Yes, sir.
You hear that in the Army and everything else, but you employ it. We're going to find out why when we come back, so we're going to take a break. Don't go away.